All right, ladies. May the 4th be with you. That's a Star Wars joke. Today we're going to talk about why the United States actually entered into World War II. Up to this point in our unit, we have learned why World War II started, all of the stuff that happened between 1920 and 1937 or 1939 that brought the world into a global conflict. Last week we talked about the early years of World War II and how the United States responded to the early years of World War II. Today, we're going to see what brought the United States into the war in earnest. What I'd like you to do first is take a look at two political cartoons. They are linked right here, or they're posted right here in this slide presentation, but also in your note page, which looks like this. You've got two cartoons, one here and one here. I want you to look for symbols in the cartoons, identify things you see, and then try to figure out the artist's message, in these two cartoons. The artist is the same message. The artist in both cartoons is the same. It is Dr. Seuss. And I'd like you guys to see also how these two cartoons, the message in the cartoons is different. So take a minute, pause the video, and let's take a look at these cartoons. All right, so you have looked at these cartoons. You have noticed a lot of different things in the cartoons. Let's start with this one over here on the right. This one on the right was published first. It was published in May of 1941. This cartoon is critical of the American policy of neutrality during World War II. So, in the forefront of this and right in the center of this cartoon is the United States. We know it's the United States because, you'll notice that the other characters in this cartoon are birds. The United States bird is wearing a American hat, the red, white, and blue hat with the stars and the stripes. And the bird is saying, ho hum. When he's finished pecking down that last tree, he'll quite likely be tired. And we look around, then we can start to look at the other elements in this cartoon. And we see in the background that other trees have been pecked down. They are conquered. They are taken over. These other trees include Denmark, Norway, Greece, and Yugoslavia. If we look down at the bottom, we see Holland is also pecked down. France and Poland are pecked down. They are taken over. They've been conquered. The question is, what is taking over or what is conquering these countries? And it is a bird, another bird. In this case, it's the Nazi bird. It's Nazi Germany. The Nazi bird is a symbol of Nazi Germany. And that bird is currently attacking England, which is what was happening in May of 1941. And we know Dr. Seuss is being really critical of the U.S. policy of neutrality. The United States is not stepping in to help England at this point in the cartoon, at least. In actuality, the United States was supporting England, but not with troops, not sending a fighting force over into Europe. But the United States was supplying England with supplies. But still, Dr. Seuss was critical that the United States wasn't doing that. The United States was just letting Nazi Germany attack England. The bird does say, maybe he'll be tired when he's done. That appears unlikely, given the fact that Nazi Germany, at this point in the cartoon, had already taken over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is that 9 countries? 9. It already knocked down 9 trees by the time it was attacking England. It seemed that England is just about ready to go down. Eventually, Nazi Germany would set its eyes on the United States. And that was something that, Adolf Hitler didn't say explicitly that I know of in his speeches, but he did talk about his desire for the Nazis and for Germany to take over not just Europe, but to conquer the world. And eventually that meant the United States would be taken over. So that's a May 1941 cartoon. This other cartoon comes from September of 1941, and it has a different message. In this cartoon, we have the United States is this guy here sitting in the ocean, the old man of the sea. The old man of the sea is sitting on a porch, a pedestal, something sticking out of the water. He's trying to stay out of the water. In this case, the water is a symbol of war, right? And he's labeled the Neutrality Act because the United States, up until 1941, had tried to proclaim neutrality in World War II, that they weren't going to get involved, that they weren't going to send troops and support one side or the other. Of course, we know from last week that the United States was in fact very involved in World War II, despite proclaiming neutrality. And they were involved because they were sending supplies, aid that will win, to countries fighting Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and the military government in Japan. And what Dr. Seuss is telling us, because the old man is connected to this ship, is that eventually, as the ship gets farther into the ocean, the old man would be pulled into the conflict. And Dr. Seuss is telling us that no matter what, even though the United States is claiming it will be neutral, it will, of course, become involved in the conflict. And ultimately, that is the background of what brought the United States into World War II. When the war broke out, the United States proclaimed neutrality. They said they wouldn't be involved. As the war went on, the United States increasingly saw, especially Franklin Delano Roosevelt and politicians in Congress, increasingly noticed that the interest of the United States was to support countries fighting against Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and the military government in Japan. The United States felt at some level that if those three countries defeated their allies, England or China, for example, that the United States would eventually become the target of Italy, Japan, and Germany. So as the war went on, the United States became involved by supplying military goods to the countries that were fighting against Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Japan. Namely, the United States were supporting countries like England and China. And in fact, that support escalated throughout 1941. Like the United States in 1941, the Lend-Lease Act was passed to provide supplies to China and to England to fight against Nazi Germany and Japan specifically. But in the summer of 1941, the United States actually froze the assets, the money of Germany, Italy, and Japan in the United States. So if they had money in American banks, the United States froze those assets so they couldn't be used. And then they actually issued a trade embargo against Japan, making it basically impossible for Japan to get any sort of military goods, iron, steel, coal, oil, gasoline into Japan that Japan needed. And that leads us up to the event that brought the United States into World War II in earnest, that led to declarations of war. Historically, it's referred to as a day that will live in infamy. And that line comes from a speech that Franklin Delano Roosevelt made on December 8th of 1941. What I want you guys to do is in your note page, click on this link here. This link will open up a speech or an excerpt of a speech that we're going to read. I'm going to read with you guys together, and then you guys are going to read that speech and answer these 5 questions. So here we go. The speech. I've edited it. I've got some annotations in here already, so just some vocabulary words. Infamy is a word that means famous for a bad reason. It means that it's an event or a person is famous for being bad or evil. Solicitation means outreach. So in the context of this sentence, we'll read it in a moment. Japan had solicited the United States to maintain peace in the Pacific at some point. We'll read that in a moment. And then the word dastardly down here. Dastardly means wicked and cruel. All right. So just previewing these vocabulary words, especially infamous and dastardly, we're going to read about something bad that happened. So President Franklin Delano Roosevelt makes this speech, and he says yesterday, so the speech is made on December 8th, 1941. He says, yesterday on December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. So it's a day that will be famous for a bad reason. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. I underline this text. It's really important to the speech. It doesn't need any explanation. He's telling the American people that the United States was attacked by Japan. And then he gives some context. He says the United States was at peace with Japan, that nation, and at this outreach of Japan or solicitation of Japan was still in conversation with its government and its emperor looking toward the maintenance of peace in the Pacific. Again, that's sort of true. The United States and Japan were sort of in negotiation to end America's trade embargo with Japan, but no real progress is being made. The attack yesterday on the Hawaiian Islands has caused severe damage to American naval and military forces. So Japan attacked Hawaii. Very many American lives have been lost, and in addition, American ships have been reported torpedoed on the high seas between San Francisco and Honolulu. Yesterday, the Japanese government also launched an attack against Malaya, and last night, Japanese forces attacked Hong Kong. Last night, Japanese forces attacked Guam. Last night, Japanese forces attacked the Philippine Islands. Last night, the Japanese attacked Wake Island. This morning, the Japanese attacked Midway Island. So Japan did not just attack Hawaii. They also attacked a number of other territories in Southeastern Asia. And notably, the Philippines at this point in time were actually an American colony. And now, how the United States eventually got involved in the war. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and Navy, that's the President, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense. So this is an important part of the speech as well. The United States isn't being aggressive. Roosevelt is saying what the United States does next is done in the United States' defense. It's doing this to protect the United States. Always will we remember the character of the onslaught or attack against us, no matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated or pre-planned invasion. The American people, in their righteous might, will win through to absolute victory. And then in the last portion of the speech, Roosevelt says, I ask that Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly or wickedly and cruel attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, a state of war has existed between the United States and Japan. So what Roosevelt is doing here in this last sentence is he's asking Congress to declare war on Japan. So this speech is telling us that on December 7th, 1941, Japan attacked the American naval base in Hawaii, but also then began to expand and take over territories in the southeastern part of Asia. This territory here, which at the time was called Indochina, and then the Southeastern Asian islands here. What you guys are going to do next is skip down past the full text of the speech to a Pearl Harbor fact sheet, and you're going to read this fact sheet here, a couple paragraphs about what happened and the events that led up to the conflict, and you are going to then answer these other questions. And then you're done for the day. And then we are going to come back on Wednesday, and we are